What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Underworld, Rise of the Lycans. This is the fourth time I am filming this video because for some reason I just keep blabbering and I'm not getting my thoughts out coherently, and I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. And I thought to myself, I'll just film this video tomorrow, but I don't want to film it tomorrow. I've already done it 3 other times, and let's just get this review done, Anthony. What the fuck? So here we are with the prequel to the Underworld franchise. A big thanks to David from Interpreting the Stars for being here in this video to talk about the prequel. This is the 3rd film to be released in the series, but a prequel, and I like reviewing series like this in chronological order. So let's go ahead and get into my thoughts on this movie, and we'll hear from David in just a little bit. But as usual, you can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. Rise of the Lycans, like I just mentioned, is a prequel and the 3rd film in the series, but goes back to give us a little bit of backstory of the character of Lucien, played by Michael Sheen in the other Underworld films, who is the leader essentially of the Lycans, the werewolves. In this film, we're introduced to the fact that the Lycans are essentially used as slaves under the vampires, and the vampires in this franchise kind of have a hierarchy. There's like a royalty kind of element to them. The leader of the vampires is played by Bill Nighy, and his daughter Sonia is played by the actress Rhona Mitra in the film, who I've never really seen in anything else other than this film, but I enjoy her in this film. I really enjoy Bill Nighy as the leader of the vampires. He plays the character of Victor, who does appear in the other films. And this film, more so than anything, has to primarily do with his character and Michael Sheen's Lucien, and kind of giving us a little bit of more connective tissue to kind of show us how they end up where they are in Underworld. So this is a film that tends to be called an unnecessary prequel, and I agree and don't agree, because I think that there's elements about this film that do kind of, you know, build up these characters a little bit more. But I think when you look at other prequels and other franchises, even something like the Star Wars prequels, whatever your thoughts on the films, you can at least look at those movies and be like, okay, there's important information here that does inform what happens in the other films. Whereas with this one, it just is kind of more backstory to show us how somebody ended up becoming a villain, even though I think that this film doesn't really do a good job of making him feel like a villain by the end of the film. You kind of are rooting for his character by the end of the film because he is the protagonist, and in the other films, the vampires are the protagonists. So it's an interesting kind of way to tell a story, even though I feel like it does leave something to be desired. So the basic premise of this film is we're introduced to the fact that Lucien is the first of his kind, a Lycan. And in this franchise, we have Lycans and then we have werewolves. The werewolves are people that get bitten by werewolves, and you're probably thinking, why are you explaining this to me? But it's because they have a slight difference. The werewolves get bitten by werewolves and become werewolves, but stay werewolves. Lycans are what we more traditionally know as werewolves, which is somebody who is able to turn from werewolf back to human and back and forth. And the term Lycan isn't exclusive to this franchise. We do see the term Lycan used in other franchises or movies that have to do with werewolves. You will see the longer term for Lycan mythology appearing in those other films from time to time. But yeah, this film makes a point to kind of differentiate the two. And then we find out over the course of time that Lucien and Sonia, the daughter of the leader of the vampires, have a bit of a romantic kind of Romeo and Juliet kind of relationship. And yeah, that's essentially our movie. And now Lucien, over the course of the film, is tired of being a slave under these vampires, and he gets all the other Lycans who are slaves under the vampires to kind of rise up, and that's where our movie kind of takes off. What I will say right out of the gate is my biggest negative about this film is how dark it is. It's a movie that even watching it at night with all the lights off on a nice 4K TV still is just so dark that sometimes you can't even see what's happening. I can't even imagine watching this movie during the day with any sort of glare coming through the window with the sunlight, or even having the lights on in your house. You would literally be staring at yourself for half the movie because of how dark the film is. And because majority of the film focuses on vampire characters, or at least takes place in a setting where there are a lot of vampire characters, not a lot of the movie takes place at all during the daytime. There's maybe only 2 or 3 scenes in the whole movie, or just shots in the movie that are during the day. And, you know, it's very brief. And so for the majority of the film, there is this very dark kind of black and blue kind of tint over the film. And I just feel like they sucked all the color out of this movie, which I kind of enjoy what they were going for. You know, they would kind of go for this very, you know, gothic style, this very edgy kind of gothic vibe that a lot of early 2000s vampire films had, and we've seen it, you know, successfully done in a lot of movies like the Blade movies or in something like Queen of the Damned. But in this movie, I think that they just kind of missed the mark just a little bit as far as the color tone of this film, because even some of the other Underworld films have a better color palette, even though they're dark as well, with kind of that blue filter over the film. This one I feel is just way too dark, and at times it's just muddled. It's hard to see what's happening. But beyond that, I enjoy the costume design and the practical effects used in this film, whether it's the weapons or the leather outfits, the very extravagant, over-the-top fantasy outfits that they do have in this franchise. It's very cheesy, it's very over the top. If you guys have been watching this channel for a while, you know that I am a fan of fantasy. So when I see stuff like this that just kind of goes for it and people are walking around in leather pants, I'm all for it. I'm all for it 100%. I think my favorite part of this film, without a doubt, is Michael Sheen as Lucian. He sells me in the character, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But what I can really say about this movie on it overall is that it's a film that, sure, is not necessarily necessary, but I do find it to be an entertaining time. I enjoy a lot of the action. I enjoy the lore. And there are things to kind of laugh at the movie for. You know, there's definitely some cheesy elements, some things that don't work, some stuff that's just like, what were they thinking? But I think my biggest negatives would be the, you know, color palette or the lack thereof, and the fact that it just feels like so much about the film was undercooked. The film is like about an hour 30, an hour 40, and by the end of the movie, it just feels a little uneventful. If I was to explain this film for you, scene for scene, you'd think, well, that's not necessarily uneventful, but I just feel like as far as the meat and potatoes of character development, and specifically the romance between Lucian and Sonia, I feel like without a doubt, they could have given us a little bit more meat and potatoes for us to really feel for the characters and what ends up happening to them near the end of the film. In and of itself, it's a movie that, you know, is just okay, but I find it to be a good time. It's a movie that I do find to be just an entertaining watch. Maybe it's a guilty pleasure, but even rewatching it this time and having the criticisms that I do have, I still found it to be a pretty good time. Now, I mentioned that Michael Sheen is my favorite part of the film, and I still agree with that till this day. Rewatching it again, him as Lucian, I just believe it. I believe him as this character who's just tired of being oppressed and wants to grab all of his brothers, the Lycans, and kind of just rise up and, you know, take control and be over this whole vampire control thing. I really do buy into his character. I really enjoy his journey. I believe in it. And I just wish they would have given the movie a little bit more of a stronger story. This film is directed by Patrick Tatopoulos. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but this was actually his first ever film debut, and I believe his last. And if he has done something else, it hasn't really been very big. He's done a lot of short films, and he's mainly known for production, being a producer, but this was the first of his feature films that he's ever made, and it definitely shows. There's definitely some amateur, just directorial elements. You can see it in some of the editing, and the movie on an overall level is not 100% strong, but I think that he still made a movie that for me was a watchable good time. I think that it's a movie that, though I do have negatives about, I find it to be enjoyable, and I just enjoy the lore and the concept. I think if you took this exact same movie and this exact same concept and gave it to a stronger director, this could be a really, really great movie, and I think that Michael Sheen is really what keeps me locked into this movie. Now, I want to show you guys a scene that is really why I'm sold on the character of Lucian, played by Michael Sheen here in this film, and it's the scene where he is talking to all the other Lycans, essentially a speech scene where he's getting all of them kind of riled up to join him. I'm going to try to cut it up so I don't hopefully get a copyright claim, but I probably will get a copyright claim. But here we go. I want you guys to check out this scene, and this is exactly why I love Michael Sheen in this role.
Is this what you want to be their entertainment, their playthings? Their pets? Cowering beneath the whip. And then fighting amongst ourselves? Is this what you want? I've lived by their rules my entire life. I've protected them, envied them. And for what? To be treated like an animal. We are not animals! We do have a choice! We can choose to be more than this! We can be slaves! Or we can be Lycans! Are you with me?
I have always loved that scene. He just sold it for me. I'm so into it. I believe his character. I believe that he's over being oppressed and that he wants to rise up with his brethren. And, you know, I've always just really loved that scene. Just as a snippet, as a clip, I really just enjoy Michael Sheen in that moment. I think he delivers the lines beautifully and super believably. And without a doubt, I think that that's where the heart of the film for me is. Now, I do enjoy the relationship between him and Sonia, though I feel it's a little undercooked by the time the film ends. But I buy into it. I feel for his character, and I just feel like they could have done so much more to really flesh out their romance over the course of the film. I just feel like it really came down to a time management thing where you do have this really cool concept and these cool characters, but by the end of the film, it just feels like they just didn't do enough with it. Now that I've rambled my thoughts a little bit, let's go ahead and hear what David from Interpreting the Stars have to say about this one.
Here's the review. Hey, what's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today Anthony has asked me to join him once again on his channel to review Underworld, Rise of the Lycans. As soon as he asked me to review this with him, I had to ask, well, you know, is it important for me to go back and watch the others first because I hadn't seen them yet? And he's like, no, it's a prequel, it's standalone. Okay. Time to introduce me to this franchise that I knew next to nothing about other than three things: Kate Beckinsale, vampires, werewolves. Sounds promising enough, but does it deliver or does it discombobulate? Let's get cracking. This collab is brought to you by the word of the day: discombobulate, to confuse or disconcert, aka upset or frustrate. Underworld, Rise of the Lycans focuses on the life of Lucian, played by Michael Sheen, the first of many Lycans who throughout the runtime of the film rise, because it's called Rise of the Lycans. And he has a star-crossed Romeo and Juliet thing with Sonja, played by Rhona Mitra, who I thought was Kate Beckinsale at first, but apparently was not. From there on out, lots of random action occurs, people die, and nobody cares. I didn't like this movie at all. Let me tell you all a story, boys and girls. When I started reviewing films, I had this little thing that I called the 15-minute test. Basically, within the first 15 minutes of any given film, I'd get a good idea if I'd like the rest of the movie or even consider it watchable. 99% of movies pass that test. A select few don't. And every time that I've watched past those 15 minutes of a movie after it failed my test, I've more or less been right. Rise of the Lycans was one of these movies. I mean, so was Cats, which was another movie that Anthony forced me to keep watching. But I can't even begin to tell you how frustrated I was with this movie and how much I was struggling to keep watching. I was easily distracted, but I pushed forward. To give you an idea of the things that I specifically thought was bad, one, I thought it was just boring. My wife and my brother have both seen this entire series and both agree that this movie is one of the worst in the whole entire bunch, and that mostly has to do with the fact that it's unnecessary. Again, I haven't seen the other movies, so I can't say if that's true for me or not, but it feels unnecessary when you watch it, if that makes any sense. When asking myself what the point of any of it was, I often came up empty-handed. I didn't know. Let's take a look at vampires and werewolves. The vampires are okay as a standard for vampires, but I didn't understand their purpose. They were kind of like royalty where they enslaved these Lycans, and I guess they protected humans from them for money or something? I'm not entirely sure, but again, why? What's the point? Why do they need money? They're not going to buy food, are they? They eat people because they're vampires, don't they? And if they eat people, why are the people of the town willing to go to them in the first place? I don't know. Anyways, let's look at the werewolves for a second, which all around I thought to be horrible. One, I think the idea that they're getting at here is that there's a difference between werewolves and Lycans. Werewolves were initially creatures that start out as human, they turn into wolves, and they stay that way. But Lycans were special because they transform back into human. You know why that frustrates me? Because they were telling me that a Lycan is essentially what I've always considered to be a werewolf. The same type of werewolf I've seen in every werewolf movie and TV show ever made, and I feel like this special Lycan word should be used for those werewolves that get stuck in wolf format. Plus, the beginning exposition started out explaining all of this, but they worded it so horribly that it left me confused for like a half hour. Also, the look of the wolves, whether it be CGI or practical, is just, it's a joke. It looks horribly fake and stupid, and I hated every second of it. Next, let's take a look at the casting. The three actors that stood out to me in a bad way was Rhona Mitra, Michael Sheen, and Bill Nighy, the three main characters. Rhona did alright in general, but I did spend a majority of the first half of the film believing it was Kate Beckinsale. I think that was sort of the point based on some sort of quote that was said in a different movie, which I think is dumb, so I didn't really like being confused about that. Bill Nighy, I like him as an actor, and I do think that he fits the look of this character, but when he's supposed to get all action heavy in some of these scenes, I stopped believing it was him. Finally, Michael Sheen, another actor I'm okay with in general. I thought he was the wrong choice for Lucian. I know him as more of a dramedy actor, a guy that does better in a lighter atmosphered or even comedic setting. Not to say that he can't do anything dark or brooding, but I didn't believe him in this role or believe that Michael Sheen can turn into a werewolf. Man, I don't know. I'd rather watch all the Twilight movies back to back at this point. Those aren't that great either, but you can watch them and have a good time making fun of them, as I feel like Anthony does with this movie, more so than I think the general public can with this movie. Let's take a look at my final score. Anthony, you're gonna have fun with this. From a purely technical, unbiased level, I think the movie was fine. A lot of the stuff like practical effect work and CGI did disappoint me, as did the fact that I feel like the story was slightly convoluted. This score is slightly lower than half at 46%. As for my bias score, I couldn't get out of this movie faster. I stuck with it as promised, but I was wanting to claw my eyes out at the same time. This score is 10%. When we average out the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 28%. 28 out of 100 possible stars, or an F letter grade, and I wish I could give it lower than an F. Yeah. Thank you once again to Anthony for including me in another one of your wonderful collab ideas. It was fun. Anyways, guys, make sure to subscribe to Anthony's channel, and I'll hand it back to him, and we'll hear what else he has to say about this horrible movie. Peace out.
Really, dude? Really? I'm just kidding, man. Thank you so much for being here in this video. Always a pleasure to hear your thoughts on movies, even if we're on the complete opposite end of things. And it kind of makes these kind of collabs interesting and fun, and I would say more so for those of you who are watching. This film is about vampires versus Lycans versus werewolves, and now you have the choice. Are you team Interpreting the Stars, or are you team Anthony A. Perez? Do you like this film? Do you enjoy this film for what it is? Or do you think this movie is trash like David did? I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. There are a couple things that you said that I definitely want to make note about. One of them being Michael Sheen. I think he's great in the film, as well as Bill Nighy. I really enjoy him. I keep seeing Davy Jones every time he speaks, though. When he's talking in this movie, he's definitely channeling that Davy Jones-esque kind of vibe. Then Sonia, played by Rhona Mitra. I really enjoyed her as well. It's funny that you thought she was Kate Beckinsale throughout the course of the film. And yeah, you know, I think Michael Sheen just really sells me on the character. I think that there are some other performances and certain characters that just kind of feel wasted and kind of like, what are they in this movie for? But for the most part, I really enjoy the costume design. I enjoy the practical effects. I enjoy the design on the werewolves, the practical werewolves. It's a little cheesy, a little bit much at times, but I feel like these films are over the top, you know, big fantasy films, and I feel like the werewolves and the practical effects on these werewolves definitely fit the tone that these films set up. It's not an amazing film, and this isn't one of those films where it's like, this is the hill to die on, you know what I mean, as far as my opinion. But it is a film that I do find to be a good time, and it is a bit of a bummer to hear that you were so against it. Just to hear how much you didn't like it is just like, you know, that's kind of the fun of doing these kind of videos, right? You never know what's going to work. There's been times I've given movies that I genuinely love to people and they completely hate them, which is just kind of the fun of this. And it gives you guys who are watching an opportunity to pick a side on who you're with here, you know. It happened with me not too long ago when I gave Rashaji Reviews the movie Holes with Shia LaBeouf, which I think is a way better movie than this, and is a movie that I genuinely really love, but Rashad did not like it at all. So you never know who's going to like and dislike things. Again, this isn't a phenomenal film. This is just a movie that I like, and I was looking forward to seeing what you would have to say. Didn't expect you to dislike it so much, but I appreciate you be giving your honest thoughts as usual. And you guys can find the link to David's channel down below in the description box. He's got that great little rating system that he does at the end of his videos and his word of the day. So go give him some love and let him know I sent you. As for wrapping up my thoughts on this movie, not an incredibly well-written film, but a film that I think is cool in concept, that has good performances, that has some cheesy CGI and some, you know, cheesier elements, but I enjoy the costume design. I enjoy the action, though some of the action is really choppy. Some of the editing and certain action sequences is just overly edited, and that just kind of took me out of some of it, but a lot of the action is pretty cool. I enjoy the overall feel and vibe of the film, and I really enjoy Michael Sheen as Lucian. That scene I showed earlier really just always rings in my head when I think about this movie. It's one of those things that I just kind of remember all the time. I enjoy his performance. I believe it. I enjoy and believe the relationship between him and Sonia, though I feel it was undercooked by the end of the film. And on an overall level, it's a movie I like. I'm not in love with, I don't hate, I don't dislike, but I'm definitely curious to hear what you guys have to say. So again, are you team Interpreting the Stars, or are you team Anthony A. Perez? Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Hit that like button, comment your thoughts, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you guys in another one. What's wrong with me? I feel like I couldn't talk in this video. Anyway, later guys.